And Formula One Philosophy is back for the Canadian Grand Prix recap, the 2025 race, which we will delve into over the course of the next, I'm going to assume half an hour or so. Sean and I, we try not to brag about Canada. Sean's a modest person. I am sometimes a modest person. We don't do much right in this country. We don't know how to win the sport that we invented. We lose to people who live in swamp-like heat year over year. But one thing we do damn well is the Canadian Grand Prix. And I thought this race was a great race. We'll get into details. But Sean, what did you think of the Canadian Grand Prix this weekend?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I'll be honest, I thought it was not one of the better ones that have happened, but it's definitely one of the better races this year. Yeah, I don't know. I love that track, so it's hard for me to say anything other than it was great.
Well, somebody loved it because it was extended for another 3 years, so we got it for another 8 seasons or 9 seasons. And I thought it was an amazing race. Yeah, last year was so good. I think that's such lofty expectations. And races like the 2011 Grand Prix and others along the way made it so that one didn't seem like one of the best. But it was such a great race in the way it evolved. I thought like you had a good little start. You had twists with pit stop strategies. After the first pit stop, you had a nice little build-up between, I would say, around lap 20 till about lap 50. It was just, you could see it was building up to a great climax, a great crescendo. There was just a lot of, I don't want to use the phrase because it's a negative, but it was just a lot of cars going around the track trying to find something, trying to get their place in the grid. But then after lap 50, you saw an excellent race. And you saw the top 5 within 5 seconds of each other. You saw anywhere from 8th to 20th, or I guess there was only 18 cars, but 8th to 18th with one stroke of luck or a good choice of pit stop strategy could have gotten to the points. There was just a lot going on. And I think I like those kinds of races. We talked a lot about Japan this year. It was very similar, where you just build up, and then an amazing finish. And I think that was one of these races. And yeah, if there's anything you want to add to that, otherwise we'll get into our good.
No, I think that pretty much covers it. The only thing I'll say is it's a little shitty that it ended under a safety car. But other than that, yeah, I think you're spot on.
The timing was shitty, but I think we'll get into that in part 2 when we talk about the bad. Yep. This is the good, as we usually do. We usually do part 1 the good, part 2 the bad. This is the good we saw this weekend. I'll be honest, I really only saw one team as out and out good this weekend. I saw a lot of meh, but not everybody doing straight good. And I think everybody knows that's Mercedes. And not much to say there. They seem to do really well in cold air tracks. That we saw that last year. It happened again. But then again, the track temperature was very high. So I'm not going to give Russell too much props because, we all know our feelings on him. And Antonelli, his first podium, great weekend for him. Did a great job. Mm-hmm. Not much to say after that. But it was a great weekend for them. 2 questions for you. 1, what did you think of Mercedes? And 2, is there any credence to it being a cold air track with such high track temperature? What were your real thoughts there? Are you wading through the bullshit, or do you agree?
So track temperature was high compared to the ambient air temperature, but it wasn't that high. But I don't think that had anything to do with Mercedes' performance. The Mercedes car seems to do well with cold air. Cool air is denser, better for the powertrain. It has an impact on aerodynamics. I think there's something about that car that likes dense air. Obviously, the powertrain, it's used by multiple teams, and there didn't seem to be a huge net gain across all the teams that use Mercedes powertrains. So I'd say it comes down more so that the aerodynamic effect of the denser air across that car helped it. I can't explain it. I'm not an aerodynamicist. I don't have enough background in it to know how that would work, but that's my take on it.
So I think it's safe then to say sort of what Russell downplayed at the end of the race, that we're not back. This might have just been a perfect storm, a perfect situation for us.
Yeah, and I think it was. And I don't want to take anything away from them. They had a great weekend. They were on it all weekend. Everybody else kind of dropped the ball. And if you recall what we talked about at the beginning of the season, this is exactly what I was saying would happen. All these teams are very close together. They're routinely swapping places at the front. And all it takes is for, somebody to make a mistake or not have a good weekend, and the consistency of kind of the midfield will catch up to them. And that's where particularly Russell, but Mercedes as a whole have been. They've been consistent. They've been there. All they have to do is show up and wait for people to make mistakes. And in this case, it was the other teams weren't on it, and the conditions favored their car. And the end of the race showed the results.
You're right. I don't want to take anything from them. That he qualified almost a tenth and a half ahead of Verstappen, right? Like that, with a spectacular lap. And we can't sit here and say, oh, it's just lucky. No, they took advantage of their advantage, and didn't look back.
And you said he qualified a tenth and a half in front of Verstappen, where it's pretty routine this season that we're seeing less than a tenth separate the top two.
Yes.
Right.
We're lucky to see. We're lucky to see half a tenth between first and second. Yeah.
Yeah. So it shows they definitely had an advantage this weekend. That doesn't take anything away from them. They deserve that advantage. The last race or two wasn't so kind to them. Right, Monaco definitely wasn't kind to them, so this makes up for Monaco.
They're almost the reverse or inverse Ferrari of last year, right? Monaco was kind to Ferrari, and then Ferrari had a couple bad races. Mercedes had a couple bad races into Canada and won, whereas Ferrari last year disappeared into thin air. But I believe you called this your worst nightmare. And I'm not disagreeing with you on that this Mercedes consistency of being there can see, and with flashes of races like this, could see them not fight for the constructors, but maybe separate themselves in second.
Yeah, well, they're firmly in second place. Ferrari is just over 10 points behind them. Yeah. So there is obviously an opportunity for Ferrari to take second place, which is mind-boggling given what we've seen from them this year. But that's the state of having a tight mid-pack. McLaren's run away with it. They've got the championship in my books. They're 374 to 199. Like, this isn't a competition anymore. But from second place back, we're the second, third, and fourth place are within a race distance of each other. Or sorry, a race
win.
Oh, what the fuck am I trying to say, Nick? A race win of each other.
Yeah.
Realistically, considering if you have a good weekend like Mercedes did, you can get 43 points. 40 points, 43 points in a weekend is, as a constructors, is achievable. So, with the exception of McLaren, the top of the midfield is all within striking distance of second place in the constructors.
Yeah, just before we talk about... sorry, go on, yeah, go.
No, I was just going to tie that back to my worst nightmare being Mercedes, is that I don't like the current Mercedes, so I don't want to see them here, but I mean, they've done the work. I can't be mad at them.
You mean the team principal, the engineers, or the way the car looks?
More so, the car itself just seems stupid. I can't quantify that. I can't explain it. It's just, I don't like this car. It probably doesn't help that they have the douche knuckle driving it.
I have never wanted to see, you know me, and everybody who's listening has heard me talk on this podcast. I hate technicalities in this sport. I want to see things resolved on track. This was the first time ever I wanted to see a race win taken away on a technicality. Because you're right. What a fucking douche knuckle is the best word for it. I know there's probably a good explanation, and Mercedes explained their case well on appeal. And yeah, I would 99 times out of 100 never give that win to Verstappen. But this one weekend, for some reason, just the way he talked building up into it, into the weekend, just the way he just breaks suddenly and everybody sees it as suspect and Max sees it from a mile away. I was just like, you know what? For this one time, I would like to see Russell lose his win. And I'm talking about the safety car potential infringement that Red Bull protested at the end of the race. Max passes George on the side because he thinks George braked. Realistically, Max should have been paying more attention. But there was something suspect about it. It was odd.
No, there wasn't. I mean, I don't buy his nonsense. Everybody knew that was not going to end in a racing lap. That was always going to end under the safety car. So George's defense was that he was trying to keep his tires and brakes in the optimal temperature, so he had to go fast, which brought him too close to the safety car that was driving too slowly, so you had to hit the brakes that hard to keep the temperature and to not run in the back of the safety car. That was entirely Max being a fucking dimwit. He should not have been that close to Russell. There is no need to be that close to Russell with the safety car on track, clearly not pulling in. That was all Max. It was completely unnecessary from him because he knew, he had to have known, even if nobody told him, that the race was going to end under the safety car. There's absolutely no justification for being that close to Russell.
It's a fair point, but here's the counterpoint. Fuck George and the horse he rode on.
Agreed.
And the horse he rode on.
Yes. Now, George's reaction to it all was a little fucking annoying, right?
Well, as are all
ultimately,
as are all his reactions. Yeah, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, but there was nothing in it, right? And they got called in front of the stewards because the stewards had to at that point. But that was never going to amount to anything. Anybody who was hoping to see something come out of that was just delusional. So, anyway.
You're not wrong.
It's ridiculous to me because Mercedes and Red Bull aren't even competing this year, realistically, from a constructor standpoint. Verstappen and Russell, yeah, okay, they're competing with each other, but their point spread is larger than Norris and Piastri. So, I mean, this wasn't going to make or break them. It's just two drivers buying into the hype and the nonsense of the perceived drama that this would cause. Just ignore it and move on. It was a nothing.
No, it's a good point. They're gladiators playing to the crowd. George is giving what the crowd wants. Is more animosity, more words on the internet about how much they hate each other. Max has played off their rivalry. You're right. He sees him as inferior. Doesn't bother him. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It shows.
Which is also why I think he didn't go for it on turn one.
On the first lap, you mean?
Yeah.
He thought he would have the rest of the race to catch him, or he thought there's no point.
No, I think he thought there was no point. There's no point risking the suspension, especially when you have Austria coming up, which Max has been very good at and knows that track intimately. And this is not a race assuming we have the current weather that Europe is seeing, this is not a race that's going to favor the Mercedes. So Verstappen, for once used some common sense and went, ignored the jabs that Russell threw out at him in the press conferences, and just said, yeah, fuck it, whatever. Let him take corner one. We'll see if we pass him in the race, and if we don't, I'm still ahead of him.
It shows how much Max is still cares about winning this championship, because you're absolutely right with everything you just said. He still wants to compete. If he didn't, he wouldn't have cared if he got a penalty point or not this weekend and been given a race ban. Mm-hmm. So it shows how much he still cares about potentially winning this championship if there's a hope. But it also shows how desperate Red Bull is, because they recognize this was a big opportunity that they blew. And we'll circle back at the end of the episode about Antonelli. We should give him some flowers, but I just want to talk about how Red Bull, to me, is not in the good, but they are definitely in the meh. They gained some ground. They had a chance to win, you could say. They're looking okay. They're looking a little bit more consistent, but at the same time, Tsunoda's nowhere to be found. Not necessarily his fault. They're not making up ground in the constructors, really. And the team is recognizing that this is their chance. And it's gone. And they couldn't win it on track, so let's go grasp at any straw we can to win after the fact. I think the fuck up at Spain has definitely hit them harder than they're playing it, or they're saying it is, because they knew that was a big opportunity wasted, and they may not be able to gain ground from this point forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely going to be tricky, especially if things keep on this trajectory.
Max gains ground, and he's still 44 points behind Oscar. Or 43 points behind Oscar. It's tough. It would have been less than that had they pulled off Spain, or even just got the third place and 15 points. They'd be 20-something behind him. Fuck-ups in Australia, bad judgment call at Saudi Arabia. Like this is all adding up now, and this is now crunch time. Yeah. Austria, like we already said this last week, every race is now a championship for Red Bull. But you're right, Austria is that much more pressure, that much more important. Max really needs to be on it again.
Yeah, and I think there's a few races coming up that Max has an actual opportunity to win. Austria being one of them, Belgium being another, potentially the Netherlands, and then we have Imola, which the Red Bull's not really a high speed. Sorry, Monza. The Red Bull isn't necessarily a high speed car, but Max seems to get on well at Monza, so I wouldn't rule him out there. We do have Baku as well, which he's been historically good at, as long as he's not getting crashed into or blowing a tire.
Or crashing into Daniel
There's
Ricciardo.
some opportunities. Danny hit him.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around. Okay. No. Oh, that's right. No. I'm Mandela affecting myself. But then after that, it's slim pickings, right? Like Singapore, Coda should be good for him. Coda should be good for him, but it could also be really good for McLaren. Brazil should be good if it's wet. May not be wet.
Mexico,
yeah, but like when they were struggling last year, they had a really hard time there. Mm-hmm. Same with Baku and Monza. They may not be struggling. Yeah, they might have a chance, but I don't know. We could also see another Ferrari surprise. That's a wild card for Red Bull. Like if Ferrari was a lot better, this Red Bull would be out of the discussion, Max included. Oh, yeah. But I don't know. You're right. I think Austria is that important. Belgium's that important. Silverstone, he finished second last year. He could do it. I did. That's going to be the toughest one, I think. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Do you have any other goods or meh?
I'll throw Ocon in there.
Whoa.
He didn't do great, but he came in 9th. All right, the Haas looked abysmal all weekend, but Ocon kind of stuck it out if I'm remembering correctly, and I may not be, he went for a counter strategy, kind of the Haas special at this point, to try and run long. And he got some points, which is great. I don't like him, but he did a good job. You got to give him some props.
Sorry, just
I'm
interject.
good.
Just interject. 60. I think it was 66 laps on the hards, and the safety car gave him the ninth. Yeah, like that's really good. But yeah,
and this is something that you can't take away from Ocon. He can sit there on a shitty set of tires and just go. We've seen it in a number of races, not only this year, but in the last couple seasons as well, where I don't know if it's just not being broadcast, but we don't hear him bitch and moan about tires. We don't hear him bitch and moan about pace overall. He just gets out there and does it. If they're talking about it in the pre-race briefing and they say, okay, you're going to go long and, plan A is 66 laps of 70, he seems to like that. And if that's the way to score points in this Haas, then he's doing the job well.
His later years in F1 have turned him into the new Kevin Magnussen. So take that as a compliment, if you will. But yeah, you were about to say something else.
Yeah, I'm going to put Ollie Behrman kind of in both sections here. For the same reason. Behrman didn't have a good time this weekend. And we'll talk about that in the next part. But I want to give him credit in the good, because as a young guy who's hasn't been to Canada, I believe, he didn't race here last year, right?
No.
So his first trip to Canada, because the support series don't race in Canada, except for F1 Academy, which started this year. He went out there and he beat the shit out of that car. He gave that track everything, and it's not an easy track to get around. Yes, it's technically a purpose-built track. It's not public road like we talked about last weekend, but it's also got a lot of street circuit intricacies to it. And that last chicane right into the Wall of Champions, if you're not used to it and you don't know how to hit it properly, you're going to put it into the wall. And for as shitty as Behrman did this weekend, he gave that 110% all weekend. And something that wasn't really broadcast, but I've seen some clips of it since the race, he hit the wall. Behrman went into the Wall of Champions.
Wow.
But it wasn't really shown. Now, he saved it, and that's the impressive part. So not only was he pushing over the limit of what that car could give him, he was able to keep it out of catastrophe. He hit the Tech Pro right before the concrete. So part of that is luck, but his car control was actually pretty good. If he hadn't reacted the way that he did, he would have pushed wide into the concrete, and that would have been the end of him. So I'm sure he damaged the car, but I'll give him props for being a rookie who was ballsy enough to push.
I'm on Ollie Behrman embargo for the rest of the season, but I will say this. Piastri damaged his car in FP3, and he's the championship leader. So
right,
happens to the best.
And Piastri doesn't have a lot of experience around this track either. It's what, his third year?
Yes.
So he's only been here 3 times.
Yeah. Like I said, I can't comment. So if that's that, I think you were gonna say something about Hulkenberg, probably.
Yeah. So last time out in Spain, Sauber brought an upgrade, and apparently Hulkenberg can develop a car? Question mark. Because he went from zeros. So he scored points in Australia, which wasn't hard given the nature of that race, to zeros across the board until they brought an upgrade, and all of a sudden he's in the points back to back. This is uncharacteristic, to say the least, of Sauber. Now, I don't think this is going to hold on, but it's impressive nonetheless. So Sauber now has 20 points. from Nico Hulkenberg alone, which I think is more than their points total for the last couple years combined.
Yes, it's actually it's tied. So they had 16 and 23 and 4 last year. So
there you go.
So kudos to him.
So hope isn't lost. You know, maybe Hulkenberg is a little better than what you give him credit for, Nick. Or maybe I'm just trying to goad you into going off about Hulkenberg again. Who knows?
Are you going to bring in another embargo on another driver? I only have 18 drivers I can talk about now.
I mean, by the end of the season, I'm sure we'll be down to a handful.
Just the top 10. I'm only allowed to talk about the top 10 by the end of 2025.
But that only assumes that the embargo drivers don't make it into the top 10.
No, I said it last week. I'm rooting for him this year. I did not expect a point like this in the season, to be honest. I thought it would be a sporadic 20 points. I did say he would get 11 or 12 and Bortoleto would get the rest. That's not coming to fruition.
No.
Not at all, for different reasons. But yeah, maybe he is. Maybe everything they've said about him over the years is finally coming to grips. Maybe it is, in a sense, another perfect storm, in the sense that he has a clear path to develop a team that's going the way they want to go, all for a new regulation change, like a new regulation set. This might be exactly what he needed at all times. Maybe there is some credence to him being in the wrong place at the wrong time, but I'll wait till the results show themselves, like a podium or an impressive race that really, really impresses us. I'll wait till then to give up on my thoughts on him.
All right. The only other thing I'm going to say about Hulkenberg is, unfortunately, this means you'll probably see him for at least a full season next year and probably the next one. Because if he's doing this, I don't think Audi's going to want to drop their German driver. So let's hope it keeps up, at least from my side.
Hey, if he earns it, he earns it. He was
exactly.
The only reason I went off on him in the first season is because of the radio silence we saw from 2023. Like, everybody brushed that season under the rug. He was horrendous. Since then, he's improved. And I have come to his defense since then. So I'll just leave it at that. But yeah.
All right.
He's earned it. He's probably earned at least till 2027. But like we see with Alonso and Hamilton, sometimes when you hit 40, the drop off is big. But we'll see.
How old is he?
He's going to be 38 this year, I think. I think he's a year older than us.
Oh, okay. So he's still got 2 years.
What about us? I guess we only got 3.
We're done. We haven't made it yet, Nick. We're done.
For racing, yes. I meant for life, but yeah, I guess we're also done there too. Yep. August 19th.
At the pace I'm going, probably.
Yeah.
1987?
1987, August 19th. So he will turn 38 on the first summer break, because it looks like there's 2 this year, which is great scheduling, guys. Yeah. So I think that about wraps up our good and meh. A lot of meh. I think you nailed it. Like, good job Haas, or good job Ocon, not necessarily good job Haas. Good job Hulkenberg. What's the future for Sauber? Like, nobody, like, it seemed like a Jekyll Hyde weekend for almost every team, except Mercedes. And let's give Antonelli his flowers. Like, we were worried about his development, but I think if you're unsure about a driver, and this is for all Formula One team principals in the future, if you're unsure about a driver in their youth, or you're not sure they're going to develop properly, I guess just give them a good car or a decent car and coddle them until they get the results that they need to develop confidence, because it's working for Antonelli.
But I think you nailed it there. It's the confidence, right? And this is what Red Bull has failed in. There's so much hype built around the Red Bull seat and everything about it, which, in my opinion, is not merited at this point. that it's a confidence killer. As soon as you make a mistake, the confidence is gone. The pressure is there. Everybody expects you to perform from day one. And if you don't perform in 2 races, which is literally the case this year with Lawson, you're gone. It's a bullshit way to conduct business. And whoever's behind that model, which we all know who's behind that model, needs to be excommunicated. Because look at this. Antonelli, we talked about him last year. We talked about him at the beginning of this year. We didn't think he was ready. But you give him a halfway decent car, and yeah, he doesn't perform the same as Russell, but Russell has how many years in F1 now? And he's driven bad cars, and he's driven bad cars well. And Antonelli is, as far as a rookie goes, keeping up with him. So there's something to be said about how you manage young talent and how this nonsense of putting pressure on them makes them better. Well, no. Sometimes putting pressure on them is too much, right? And I have something we should probably talk about Isaac Hadjar, but we'll save that for the next part.
Yeah.
So
the ones the Red Bull anoint, they follow that formula. They follow the formula as in we have to help them through and give them confidence, right? Because there was no talk about pressure on Sebastian Vettel early on. When Daniel Ricciardo was just let to do his own thing for a few years at Toro Rosso with unspectacular results. Max Verstappen came in with a lot of hype, but they said, hey, you can do no wrong. We'll destroy Carlos Sainz instead. So for the ones that they really value, they do follow that formula.
No, but I'd be careful. I don't think this behavior at Red Bull hasn't been there from the beginning. This behavior at Red Bull only came about when they didn't have an option. When Seb Vettel left is when this started. Prior to Seb leaving, this issue didn't exist.
That's a good point.
Seb effectively created the power vacuum that led to this problem. Because then their only option was Daniel Kvyat. And frankly, I think he's underrated. But his early performance did create issues. And frankly, if we're going back and doing a root cause analysis on how Red Bull got here, I think it's their affinity for Seb and Seb complaining to Red Bull about Kvyat, which then created this precedent that if you don't perform, you get kicked out. Because Danny's the first driver that happened to.
That is an excellent historical analysis. You're absolutely right. I never thought of it that way. And he did that when he was at Ferrari. Seb did that when he was at Ferrari. He I guess brought up that whole thing with Danny Kvyat on another team, right?
What do you mean?
So didn't he start complaining about Danny Kvyat when Seb was at Ferrari?
Yeah. That was the first season. That was the first season after Seb had left, right?
Yes.
Within a couple of races. So of course he's still friendly with Horner. He's still friendly with everybody on the team, right? And if you recall, the beginning of that season started with Danny getting into tangles with Seb.
Mm-hmm.
Not because he was too slow on track and wouldn't let him pass, but because they were occupying legitimately the same track, the same part of the track at the same time. The implication being that Danny was just as good in a Red Bull as Seb was in a Ferrari. And they were tangling and getting into tussles. And Seb, with a little bit of the historical context in mind, Seb was kind of frustrated that he was in a subpar car getting passed by who he thought was a subpar driver in a better car, right? So it kind of makes sense that the 4-time champion goes, hey, who's this fucking guy crashing into me? Like, this isn't the way we race. And Red Bull, still having an affinity for Seb at that time, needed to do something about it, or felt they needed to do something about it. This is my take on it.
It's not a bad take.
Yeah.
Not a bad take. Yeah, we should do that one day. We should do like a F1 philosophy history edition. where we put everybody to sleep and talk about instances like this. And finally get to the bottom of Rubens Barrichello being the root of all things.
I was just about to bring that up. You mean we should play the How Did Rubens Barrichello Create This issue?
Yes. One day.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I love Rubens. I think he's great. But there is a good game to be played about his impact in F1 on all these critical junctures.
Speaking of, and stay tuned for the next part, because I was going to bring him up. I've had a thought for a while about him, and it lined up perfectly with the bad this week. But yeah, anything else you want to add before we move on to the next part?
No, I think we're okay for the goods.
All right. This was part 1, the Canadian Grand Prix recap of the good. We'll be back with the bad.